Not too long ago, a few days ago, at the very least, I was using a dating app called Hinge. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with it. It's become somewhat of a cultural phenomenon to have a dating app in this world where you can let it sit as sort of like a recurring investment, right? You don't have to put any effort towards it, like whatsoever. You just let the matches accrue over time while you just do nothing. But that's besides the point. When I was using it the other day, there was one girl who wrote one thing in her prompt that really caught my eye, and it made me think. It was something along the lines of, the prompt was unusual skills, right? And her answer to the prompt was having a crush on my therapist. Now, this really got me thinking because, the thing about falling in love with your therapist, and this happens, statistically speaking, to a not insignificant percentage of female patients, though I'm pretty sure the literature uses careful euphemisms like erotic transference or boundary complications. It represents maybe the purest distillation of what makes human connection both possible and impossible, which is to say the fundamental need to be seen, colliding with also the fundamental impossibility of being truly known. Consider the setup here. You're paying someone, let's say, $180 per 15-minute hour. Though this obviously varies widely by your zip code or your insurance coverage. And you pay them to sit across from you in a room that has been specifically designed to feel safe in that particular sterile but warm way that therapeutic spaces tend to feel, with the tissue box positioned at exactly the right distance and angle. And this person's entire job, their professional obligation, is to listen to you with the quality of attention that you probably haven't experienced since early childhood, if then. The therapist, let's call her Dr. K, though of course in real life her name would be something more generic, more Midwestern, maybe something like Susan or Jennifer. She sits there with her legs crossed and her notepad balanced on her knee, and she listens. Not the way your mother listened, which was always through the filter of her own anxiety about whether you were making good choices, not the way your boyfriend listens, which is really just waiting for his turn to talk or to fix the problem so he can stop feeling the ambient discomfort of your distress. Now, Dr. K listens the way people imagine God listens, which is to say completely, without judgment, at least in theory, as if every word you say matters, and as if you're the most fascinating text she has ever tried to decode. And here's the thing, the psychological sleight of hand that makes the whole enterprise work. Dr. K, she is good at this. She has been trained extensively in the art of active listening, of strategic silence, of the well-timed that communicates both understanding and encouragement to continue. She has learned to modulate her facial expressions so that she appears engaged, but also not shocked, concerned, but also not alarmed. She's aware of when to lean forward and when to sit back. She has pretty much mastered the therapeutic pause. So what you're experiencing when you experience Dr. K's attention is not exactly love, though it may feel like it would be. What you're experiencing, rather, is this feeling of being attended to, which triggers all sorts of neurochemical responses that evolution designed to, bind infants to their caregivers and lovers to each other. The brain doesn't necessarily distinguish between this person is professionally obligated to care about me and this person cares about me. The brain, it just registers sustained attention plus warmth plus safety equals attachment. This is what the psychoanalyst call transference, like I said earlier, though. That word makes it sound more clinical, more theoretical than it actually is when you're experiencing it for yourself. It's when you project onto your therapist all the unmet needs and unresolved conflicts from your earlier relationships. Usually, but not always, with your parents, though sometimes with that first boyfriend who really saw you or thought he did before everything fell apart. Transference is when Dr. K becomes, in your internal world, the good mother or the good parent that you never had, or the bad parent you're still trying to appease, or the idealized lover who will finally understand you in a way that no actual romantic partner with their own damage and defensiveness and inability to pay attention for more than 30 seconds ever could. And the erotic component, and this is where it gets a little complicated, where the professional literature starts hemming and using lots of passive voice, emerges from this same pool of need. Because what is erotic desire, really, if not the longing to be known and chosen for who you are? In the therapeutic relationship, you are being known, or at the very least, it feels like you are in this incredibly intimate way. Dr. K, she knows all about your fucking childhood trauma and your current anxiety and the thing you did in elementary school that you've never told anyone else. She knows your patterns, the defenses you set up, the walls you set up, the way you deflect with certain behavior when things get too real for you to handle. But the chosen part, that's where the fantasy breaks down, or at least where it reveals itself as a fantasy to begin with, because Dr. K hasn't chosen you. You have chosen her, and more specifically, your insurance company or your credit card has chosen her. The relationship in its entirety exists within a very specific container bounded by time. 50 minutes, maybe, and the space, her office, and professional ethics codes that explicitly forbid the kind of mutuality that love really requires. Here's what's happening, psychologically speaking, though this is almost certainly not what's happening consciously in the moment. You are experiencing the therapeutic relationship as a kind of corrective emotional experience. Dr. K, she provides what Winnicott called a holding environment, or more specifically a space where you can be vulnerable without being abandoned, where you can express the anger you have deep inside of you without being punished or judged for it, where you can be temporarily the center of someone's undivided attention. This is intoxicating. This is, for many women who have spent their lives accommodating others' needs and minimizing their own, it's revolutionary. And so the mind does what the mind does, which is to create a story that makes sense of these feelings. The story goes If I feel this much, she must feel something too. If I am this known, we must have something special. If I think about her with this much intensity between sessions, and you do think about her constantly, rehearsing what you'll say, imagining what she's doing, wondering whether she thinks about you, then surely this is love, or something close to it. This reality, the reality, which Dr. K knows, but which would be cool to say explicitly, is that she does care about you, probably, in the way that good therapists care about their patients, which is genuinely but not uniquely. You are one of approximately 25 to 30 people she sees each week. She thinks about you during your sessions, and possibly for a few minutes later when she's writing her notes. She might think about you occasionally between sessions if your case is particularly challenging, or if you're in crisis, but she's not lying awake at night thinking about you. You know, she's not wondering what you're doing right now at this moment. She's not changing her life or rearranging her life around the hope of seeing you. This is the therapeutic relationship's central problem. It only works because it's bounded, but those same boundaries that make it safe also make it in some fundamental way not real. They're not real in the way that mutual reciprocal relationships are real. The love you feel, and it is love, a version of love, or the shadow that love casts, is unrequited by definition. Not because Dr. K doesn't care, again, but because the structure of the relationship prohibits the kind of reciprocity that requited love demands. What makes this particularly difficult for women, and here we're generalizing, but the statistics bear this out, is that women are socialized from birth to interpret attention as affection, care as love, professional warmth as personal interests. Women are taught to read emotional subtext, to look for signs of connection, to value relationships above almost everything else. So when Dr. K provides professional care, it gets interpreted through this lens of relational hunger that our culture creates in women by simultaneously telling them that relationships are their highest value while systematically denying them the kind of sustained, focused attention that they actually need. The women who fall in love with their therapist, and let's be clear, this is not a failure of intelligence or self-awareness. This happens to smart, insightful, self-reflective women all the time, and are often women who have learned to confuse crumbs with meals, who have gotten so used to minimal attention from the people in their lives that Dr. K's professional regard feels like the sun on a winter's day. The ethical therapist, when she recognizes this happening, and she should recognize it, this is literally part of her training, we'll mention it, but discreetly, she'll say something like, "I notice that you seem to be developing some strong feelings about our relationship. This is actually very common and can be an important part of the therapeutic work." She will explain the concept of transference, not in a way to dismiss your feelings, but in a way that contextualizes them, that helps you understand them as meaningful data rather than as a problem of your own. And the best possible outcome here is that you use these feelings as like a lens to examine your relational patterns, what you're seeking, what you're projecting, what old problems or damages are asking to be healed. You learn to distinguish between the fantasy of being saved by someone's perfect attention the reality of building mutual relationships with flawed humans who can't and won't attend to you the way Dr. K does, but who can also offer something she can. The reciprocal nature of a relationship, the mutuality, the messy complexity of being chosen and choosing them back. The worst possible outcome here, and this happens too, though less frequently than you might think, is that Dr. K violates her ethical applications and reciprocates, which is not romantic, but is actually a profound betrayal of her professional duty and of also your vulnerability. That is not love. That this is exploitation dressed up as connection. This is a therapist who has failed at the most basic requirement of her job, which is to maintain boundaries precisely because the relationship is so intense, so asymmetrical, so vulnerable to misinterpretation. Most of the time what happens is this: you feel it intensely for a while, you maybe confess it or maybe you don't. Dr. K handles it with professionalism and care. You work through it gradually, maybe painfully, coming to understand what you're mourning is not the loss of a romantic relationship that never was, but the fact that the kind of attention you receive in therapy shouldn't be so rare in your life that it feels like love. You come to see that the work is not to win Dr. K's love, but to build a life where you have multiple sources of genuine connection, where you don't need to pay someone to listen to you as if you matter. And maybe too, you terminate therapy, which I think is the clinical term for ending it, a word that always sounds more brutal than it should, and you move on. You remember Dr. K fondly, perhaps, as someone who helped you at a difficult time. You understand with the clarity that comes from distance that what you felt was real, but also wasn't quite what you thought it was. It was the deep psychological need that was masquerading as love. In other words, it was entirely human. The question lingers, though, the one that therapy itself doesn't quite answer, is why we've created a world where the basic experience of being truly listened to is so rare that when we do encounter it, even in its artificial, boundaried 50-minute form, it feels like falling in love. What does this say? What does it say about our relationships, about our families, about this culture, that paying someone to pay attention to us can feel like the most intimate connection we have? But that's a totally different video, probably an even longer one. And anyway, your 50 minutes are up.